Welcome back, venturers. It's time for another discussion about VN. I am MR, and together with Taurus, we bring possibly the most important discussion. Are main girls the best girls? What makes a main heroine appealing and what makes such character appalling? Let's start today's discussion. Taurus, lay it on me.
This is already an incredibly wide topic, with all sorts of personal preference involving main girls and how they work in visual novels. Okay? And you did ask me, hey, Taros, what do you like most in Best Girls, and what do you not like? But I feel like before we even get into those juicy details, we need to do a quick review of what it even means to be a main girl, or a main heroine in a visual novel. Because it's a statement that sounds a lot simpler than it truly is. I mean, I think a lot of us have the stereotypical image of a visual novel as some sort of moege, with, a branching, decision point after the common route, where your choices can determine whose romanceable heroine route you want to follow. I think that's, the very stereotypical example of a visual novel. I think it's what people first think of. And I think this is the kind of setting that really lends itself most to, who is the best girl kinds of arguments. If you have a title, the typical moege, where all of the routes are considered equal, then it's truly up to the reader's preference for all of those best girl arguments. And to a certain degree, route quality also, has some importance. But overall, I think it's more of, the character designs and the personality and the interactions with the main character and the romance aspects. So, right off the bat, I think, MR, you can agree too that that's usually the typical example of what people think of about Best Girls as a starting point, right?
Absolutely. Although I will push back slightly, while those kind of VNs, the stereotypical VNs with many heroines that are close to the dating sims, depending on how much you have to track stats or choices, they open up the best girl debacle. I don't know if main girl debacle is also on the same title, but it depends. I definitely brought examples for today that is true for those. So. Because I think you made a very good point. The moment you have a typical VN in which you have many romanceable heroines, of which there is more or less equal distribution or focus on, then it's hard to debate if it even has a main heroine.
Exactly. And that's something I want to get into, is that then there are some titles, some more plot-focused titles, that still have romanceable heroines, but seem to portray one of them as being the main girl. Like, for example, this Shaden no Kuni, where it has a main storyline, and it technically has a few different heroine routes and whatnot, but it's more focused on the story aspect. Even when you get into the fan disc, and they provide some bonus, after story routes involving each of the main heroines, in the main plot line, even that considers Natsumi to be the main heroine that our main character has hooked up with in the future. And so then we get into a little more complicated arguments. Now, this tends to follow that whole anime or manga situation where there's an official and a canon couple, or, in some ways, an official best girl. But then you still have all of these heroines on the side. And then that's how you start getting into those shipping wars of people like, oh no, this pairing would be better, or oh no, Tsundere-chan is best girl. You know about that, right, Amar?
Yeah. Yeah, I get it.
Exactly. So I think then we get into added wrinkles of now we get the subjectivity involved. Now it's a very strange mix of having an official best girl in a sense, but that doesn't or may not completely, align with what all of the fans think. They're still giving the fans an opportunity to see these other heroines, but entertain the thoughts of having other best girls involved, even if that's not what actually happens. I think it's a really weird mix because on the one hand, you have reality of what's actually printed in the manga or shown in the anime or written out in the visual novel, but you still give fans a taste of it. But most of the time, fans seem to be okay with that.
True. I mean, we picked a very special VN for thumbnail. We definitely picked Mavlove as an example of a title that starts with a typical school setting. You have 5 romanceable heroines, but by the end of the title, you learn quickly which 2 of them are more important and more integral to the story and to a certain degree canonicity of events to come.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly,
oh yeah,
Mavlove did such a great job. I can't hate it. I think they are an example of how to do it gracefully, of author's vision, of the timeline, events. I don't want to go into details, not to spoil anybody who hadn't read it yet. But I feel like they explore side heroines very expansively, and I'm satisfied despite knowing they aren't canonically someone who the main character picks. And you know what? I'm okay with that.
I think that's one advantage of visual novels, in that the visual novel itself will provide those side character routes, and like you said, even though they're not canon, you still at least get to provide the material to all the fans who are interested. Like sure, in Mavlove you have the 2 main heroines who are clearly the most important to the plot. But in Mavlove Extra, in Mavlove Unlimited, you still get to see the scenes. You still get to see those little what ifs, I suppose you could say, or even just the dives into their character as well for the routes. So for visual novels, yeah, you get that taste. I think that's one of the strongest points of a VN, of just getting to offer that,
Yeah, and I felt like I needed to bring that example to contrast it with the example of how an unbalanced VN does that. So the same setup, you have a cast of romanceable heroines and a very convenient situation for the protagonist to pursue one of them. But how it works if it's not even, if it's super turbo unbalanced, and I feel like the best example of that I've read has to be Princess X, in which you are meant to pick 1 out of 4, and it bombards you every single time. Those are 4 candidates, pick 1, you're in a convenient position, world is at stake, go do romance. But out of those 4, and honestly maybe more, and I don't want to spoil, half CGs are for 1 heroine. And it is reflected by the amount of events as well. So that 1 heroine hogged all the time to herself. And what are we doing at this point? She's de facto main heroine, even though the game pretends that's not the case. Which is hilarious on one hand, but on the other hand is like, what are we doing? I want other characters, and God forbid that 1 character I liked has 2 events. Mm-hmm. What, did you not want to spare some time for this character? Did you hate it? Why did you include it?
Exactly. It's like, okay, well then why did you bother offering this heroine as a, narrative choice here? It's like, are you gonna let me have, this option, or are you not? Is this supposed to be about, 1 heroine, but the devs are hedging their bets with the others? It's like, come on, talk to me here.
Maybe, Towers, they wanted to send you a message. There are choices, but there are more correct choices to be picked, okay? Wink, wink.
Imagine that. Imagine getting to be a developer or a creator or author, whatever, and your stated goal is to be like, I need the world to know the truth of who the best girl is. I'm going to create a work and I'm going to tell my audience, you will like this one heroine in particular the most, or I have failed.
In the preparation stage for this episode, when we were gathering material to talk about some screenshots, you included school days. And that is such a great example because even author himself says that his favorite character is a side heroine. That's amazing example. And I'm speaking specifically about school days, not the expanded universe, 10,000 other characters. No.
Goodness.
The classic school days, the rivalry, the love triangle, the troubles that comes from that. And this story focuses most often about struggle from the protagonist of picking between Kotonoha and Sekai. But Sekai also has a best friend called Setsuna that protagonist also vibes with quite often. And she's absolutely the best character. It helps that she's Kudere, but we'll skip on that. I have no bias, okay? But the way she interacts with protagonist and tries to nudge protagonist into being a better guy and resolving those love drama the best she could, like, she just works so well. That's why she has so chemistry with the protagonist, and I like it. Did I mention she's a Kudera? Oh, okay.
And there we go. Why didn't you lead with that and save us all the time?
Hey, she has some maid outfits as well, so the best girl material. Prove me wrong.
But it's good that you mentioned School Days because that's a title that very specifically shouldn't have a best girl. Because that's, the entire drama is focused on the tension between this love triangle going on, between the relationships between the main character and the two other characters and other people involved. But, that should be center stage. If you have one girl who is clearly best girl, or the main, or the proper pick, then you're kind of destroying all the drama. This is one of those times where having a best girl goes against just the entire story going on, and it would kind of, destroy your own, storytelling worthiness right from the inside.
I mean, from the standpoint of a title, best girl doesn't make sense. You're right. I agree with that. From the standpoint of a reader, I suppose you can have the most favorite girl that becomes your best girl. But going back on probably your point is this title shouldn't favor one character over the other in terms of having a main pick.
It should be left to the reader to argue that in fandoms and on social media and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
This isn't
Find that engagement.
Oh God, yeah, rage baiting. It's very. I know that what you mentioned about School Days really reminds me of a video game. It's not exactly a visual novel, but it's called Catherine. That is the one. Yes, it's unique, but to cut to the important parts, the main idea is that our main character is an adult guy, and he's in a long-term relationship with his girlfriend. And now there's another girl, also named Catherine, who's making advances on him. And the core of the issue is that he needs to decide, what is he going to do? Is he going to stay with his, long-term girlfriend who he's currently going through a bit on the rocks on? Or does he go for the, new partner, dump her for someone fun and interesting and all of that?
Wait a moment. I have a question. First, this title made it very easy because obviously the best girl is Catherine, right?
Yeah.
Come on.
Very funny.
And wasn't it modular enough that they added a third Catherine as well?
I was about to say that. Okay. thanks for cutting me off there. Okay. And then the game got a re-release. And it added, I guess, I forget the exact term for what you call it. Remaster, re-release? I don't know. Whatever the proper term is.
Give me more money.
Yes, plenty of new story content, and it involved a third heroine, also named Catherine. I think her name was Rin, for short. However, Rin kind of showed up as the perfect answer, or best girl in this kind of case. How she didn't have much of the baggage going on with the other two Catherines involved, And she kind of wound up looking like, by far, the best girl of the story. And so it's very
Okay.
much like what we were talking with School Days. How when you have someone who's kind of transcending this whole big drama involved, it kind of takes all the wind out of the sails of this entire all the drama about the love triangle going on. Suddenly there's no more stress, or there's no more consequences of what the right course of action is. Now it's just, hey, here's this new Rin person who just straight up seems like the best and most likable character around. So that's one of the ways in which having a best girl needs to be juggled carefully. Because just like in School Days, the story itself, the developers themselves, can't make it clear who the best girl is. It needs to be kept even. There needs to be struggles involved, because that's entirely where the drama lies. Whereas, if you go to some a typical moege, like Making Lovers or something, to a certain degree, all of the heroines need to be best girl in some sort of way, because you want them all to be endearing, you want them all to have character depth that readers will like. Because having the more options leads to, the players having more fun. And it's very different, you have different goals. In some cases, you want to argue, you want people and fans to argue who is the best girl on social media in these kinds of situations,
And it's funny how we talked about the best girl from the standpoint of fandom, and we kind of intermingled that with the best girl as in the proper choice, so to speak, right? And I want to go for the last time for the School Days of how that side heroine was popular, despite not having that major dedicated route to herself, Setsuna, that she got a sequel, prequel, continuation in School Day universe that is basically her versus the entire world as an opposite. So it's her as a main girl and everybody else trying to get the piece of the protagonist, basically. That's absolutely hilarious. I guess creator loved that character so much, together with the fandom, that they created. It's her game now. Okay, go.
It's hers. Take over. I'm cheering for you.
Because now going away from School Days, I wanted to talk about maybe a different concept, maybe intermingled with main heroine, about true heroine. So we now move away from choice-based branching story, and I want to explore ladder structures, because they tend to have, although not exclusively, most often true heroines. Okay, and an example I have brought is the Newton and apple tree. Probably one of the first ladder structure VN with romance I've read. And I want to go at the start when you said how some titles, some VNs tend to focus on characters and the distribution story they're in, and some VNs focus on the story first, adding romance as a side story or to complement the story rather than the opposite. And I feel like with Newton and the apple tree, that was exactly the case. You had a story that, with ladder structure of choices, at certain moments allowed you to branch off and pick the ending with that current character that had an arc in this moment. So throughout the adventure, you met, I think in total is 5 heroines, and at certain moments in the story, you have a choice to be made. Okay, I pick this choice, the story ends, and they lived happily ever after with that heroine. And if you progress enough with the story, you finally get the ultimate choice at the very end to end up with the, I would assume, titular true heroine. Because she's in the title, she's Newton, okay? So what about that? Especially since, hilariously enough, every single heroine got happy ever after, except for the main heroine who had way, way, way more drama. Which is hilarious because everybody else had a happy resolution except for drama until the last possible moment, leaving you in suspension through heroine, which made for more compelling story, by the way, and maybe even more believable romance. But at the same time, it was not convenient whatsoever in comparison to the ladder structure choices that were presented before, which were super convenient, accommodating, and sometimes out of nowhere, honestly.
I think that's fine for them to be out of nowhere and stuff, though. Because if you have a main storyline with the main character, and it has its certain tone of, having the drama and the character growth and all of that, at any point, if you see some side heroine that's suddenly, oh my gosh, my heart goes doki doki for her, or something, then yeah, I mean, theoretically, that means you could immediately decide, I want to see this little side story with her, and then have fun going through the whole, I guess, character romance involved, and then just reach a happy ending like what you're describing. That seems to play to a visual novel strengths, right? The whole point of you getting to see the little what-if scenarios, of getting to make those parts real instead of just seeing it and imagining what if. That sounds like a good thing,
yeah.
right?
I agree. It's a good thing from the standpoint of the medium of VNs. I feel like it is way cheaper from the standpoint of personalized story per character, because a lot of them had a resolution based on, I guess I'll do that, and abandon the main story. Like, what the hell? And again, I'm being very vague not to spoil anything from Newton to anybody who's interested. But ultimately, when you are presented with those ladder choices, they are in a convenient way for the main protagonist to abandon the main story beat and settle, so to speak, with a given character's arc, with that character. But if you still explore the story to its completion, then it's the most dramatic, then it's the most interesting, and it leads only to one, I would say, main, or in this case, true heroine at the very end with a lot of drama, which is a disbalance in a sense, because no other characters had that intense of a story. Other than, they gave me one salt shaker one time we ate, and now we are in love.
Yeah, that's true. That is a valid criticism, I suppose.
That's what I said. It's fine if you like that character for whatever traits they had and was made. So I completely understand. But some of the convenience by which they ended up together is just kind of bullshit. Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, that's a time where the visual novel clearly intends for Newton to be the main heroine, right?
Yes, exactly. But I also brought another example of a bullshit.
Oh, so in other words, just to clarify, so you're not really a fan of how this gets handled?
I don't. Because I think in principle, or maybe on average, I haven't played that many ladder structures. Okay, so I have no huge basis of comparison. If I make a distinction between a true heroine, meaning someone whose entire story is focused about, despite the same story allowing for multiple other romanceable heroines at different points, I like that setup way more than a main heroine that has more focus but otherwise has the same story importance. If that transpires as a ladder, or is it transpired as an unlockable true route choice, I don't care. I feel like I like more of a true heroine than main heroine syndrome, if that
main
clarifies.
Character syndrome. Okay, that's interesting. I think that's valid.
Because, again, I haven't had that much examples to pull off for ladders, and I wanted to now go back to another bullshit, so to say, that I've encountered when it comes to romanceable heroines. I feel like I have to bring back Libra of the Vampire Princess, because when I approach a VM, okay, I tend to not look at it at all. I go in blind. I want to read it blind, etc. And everywhere Libra was advertised like, you see, there are 5 heroines. Go. It's a story about vampires. And I'm like, okay, I've recently watched Monogatari. Monogatari was cool. Maybe that will be the vibe. The main heroine, or at least the one that was featured the most in all the posters and advertisements, is a vampire with gothic dress. That sounds cool. Let's go. And that's the one character that doesn't have a route. I felt so robbed. That's some bullshit.
I'm sorry, what?
I felt so robbed.
Yeah,
How can you advertise a character that isn't romanceable in a game about romanceable characters? What the fuck?
So even though she's still occupying that role of main heroine, in a sense she's not a romanceable character, it's just purely...
She doesn't have a route, nothing romanceable, nope. She's an antagonist.
But story-wise, she's still very important though, right?
I guess it's central antagonist, although not in all routes. For whatever reason. It's like, what happened?
Okay.
Where's my funny Shinobu lookalike from Monogatari? What the hell? I feel cheated now.
Oh my gosh. Very strange. Interesting. Okay. But last
I
of all...
think that's the only title that I felt that way, even though there are more titles that had unromanceable heroines that didn't have a router set, etc., etc. But I felt the most misled with this one.
Last of all, there is one other kind of visual novel, is that there is the type with only one heroine. There's no talk of other romanceable options, or no other choices, or no other Lazarus or stuff. It is purely revolving around one heroine in a very typicalized story. And I think one clear, direct example of that would be like that Made for Loving You, right, Amar? That's a very straightforward story involving only one heroine, and that's the entire strength of the VN, right?
Yes, although this one is very convenient, so it is less about the story and more about the developing romance. I think I forgot the Japanese name, but this was the healing VN, very much focused on coziness. When it comes to single heroine with a story, the first one that comes to mind has to be Lucy. An eternity that she wished for. Like, everything hinges on how you portray relationship between the main protagonist with that one, I mean, de facto, by default, main heroine.
Exactly. And that's the entire strength of the story. Something like Lucy, something like Made for Loving You, something like Qualia, The Path of Promise.
Ooh.
Yeah, and some of them I really enjoyed the romance stories, and some of them I don't. And I guess in that case, it's a lot more reliant on just how the story portrays the romance and the relationship and the character as well.
You compare it with titles that offer multiple characters. If you have a title that focuses on one heroine, then there is no illusion of giving you options, but truly there's one correct one. No, you focus all on that. But this makes or breaks the story. Because I agree with you, there are some that just like, no bueno. And some I really, really like. Like Lucy, I really liked. I really enjoyed that one.
It's putting all your eggs in one basket, so to say.
Yeah, exactly. The only other ladder structure with multiple choices, now that I was thinking in the back of my head about the ladder structure all the time. And the only thing I had in mind that mixes a little bit of the main heroine canonicity with the ladder structure has to be Chrysaya, oddly enough. And that's interesting because on one hand, Chrysaya is a story about a special school for needy children with only 6 occupants. 6? I think it's 6 or 5. I think it's 6. But ultimately, all characters are romanceable. That's the setting. But the way how you go about it is not about choices. You don't pull any affection meter or anything like that, but rather it retains the ladder structure. You will get at some point a single choice whether or not you pursue that heroine or move on. And now the question is, Thomas, to you, if you don't pick anyone, you get assigned the last one. Is she the default? Is she main? Is she true heroine?
Oof, the default.
Yeah, you get the default heroine. Like, what?
Oh lordy.
Don't worry, she's the worst one, but is she main?
That's rough.
What happens then?
So I guess on one last note, which style is your favorite, Amar, for highlighting a best girl?
This is such a hard choice, or a hard thing to answer, because on average, I tend to like side heroines more. Like, let's give an example of Fate, the most classical example. I feel like my favorite might be Unlimited Blade Works, although it is in very high contest with Heaven's Feel. But in both of them, the most intriguing character is not the heroine that was focused on in those roles. In Unlimited Blade Works, the best heroine was Archer.
Okay.
It was the most interesting. But Heaven's Field left me hoping, give me more about Ilya, because I'm intrigued to no end. So I tend to gravitate to side character, so it's hard for me to say what style works best for me. I feel like I still like the most the even spread, the more or less equal focus on all characters. You know what? I'll give you a leeway with maybe a sprinkle of unlockable, true, hidden heroine, whatever. You know what? I'll give you that.
Okay. I somewhat agree, actually. I think a lot of who I'd enjoy as best character comes a lot through the plot. It comes a lot through how the character acts and what goes on in the plot, whatnot. You know, character design isn't all that big of a deal for me, like how some people just adore tsuderes, or in your case, kuderes. And so, having more routes available to really explore characters' backstories and whatnot is, generally, better in my eyes. Because then there's more options for getting to see all sorts of wonderful people. For Magikoi, going in, I didn't think too much of anything of Wonko. However, once I got into her route and I saw all the stuff that goes on, she rocketed up to best girl for me. And it's one of those times where if that route hadn't existed, if I didn't get to see the depths of her soul like that, then I wouldn't have just adored her as best girl in Magikoi so much. And so, yeah, for me, for someone who's really, has an emphasis on the plot and seeing the characters and their struggles and whatnot, having multiple character routes is, the best in my eyes.
I mean, let's be honest also, Taurus, statistically, childhood friends, which you like the most, and green hair does not make for main heroine syndrome.
Man.
They are going into the sidelines and leave the spotlight for the most dere pink haired girl there is. Okay.
Every time, man. There's no salvation. I see that pink haired heroine and my heart just gets stabbed.
Exactly.
The poor green-haired girl will be left on the sidelines. Oh.
Maybe she'll get a fan disc. Maybe.
Oh, well. But that has been a very interesting journey into all sorts of visual novels and how they interact with who the people decide as best girl. And so it's been a very interesting look, and you gave a lot of great examples and discussions, Amar.
Thank you. Although now that we reached the conclusion of this episode, I dread the next words, because I don't know if I want to ask our listeners to write comments about best girls, because our comment section would explode. Please be nice. Thanks to all our listeners. And yeah, leave in the comments who's your best girl.
Yeah, I'd be
The
interested
war
to
begins.
hear. Go ahead. Yeah, let it all out. Yeah.
With that, venture out.
Venture out.